Okay, so today I'm going to talk about the global patterns of vegetation water use strategies derived from soil moisture dry downs. But before starting, just a little bit introduction about myself. My name is Ryoko. I came from Japan, did my bachelor in Japan, started working with Hillary Macmillan at San Diego State as a master's student, continue working with her as a PhD student. And this program is also joint with UC Santa Barbara. So Kelly Kayla is another mentor of myself. And in 2023, I did National Water Center Summer Institute. That's where I met Jonathan and how I got into this group. And yeah, these three people are very important people in my life. And but I guess that my highlight of my career is I won the Bingo Award in HydroML 4.0, and then got this anteater. It's really cute. Yeah, that's me. And my PhD thesis or research so far has been driven by my interest in the soil moisture. Soil moisture is interesting because it governs lots of different processes. It's going to partition the energy into sensible heat and latent heat by evaporation, and plants take some of them as transpiration. And soil surface is where you get the partitioning of runoff and infiltration. So there is lots of threshold behavior going on at the soil surface, energy limited, water limited, so on. So I am trying to find the signature in the soil moisture data that informs us about underlying processes. That's my overall PhD is. And what is signature is, this is an example of stream flow signatures. Signature is our metrics derived from a hydroclimatic dataset that captures some dynamic aspects of the watershed system. And for the example of stream flow, you have base flow index, the flow duration curve, rising wind density, and so on. And this is the figure that Hillary often brings up by, and what this figure tells us is when we evaluate the model or some understanding conceptual model, we try to measure it with only one metrics. But if we have these hydrologic signatures that characterize multiple aspects of the dynamics, as a diagnostic tool, we might be able to characterize the system better, so that expanding this green area by introducing the hydrologic signature. And Pierre's lab has done lots of research on the stream flow signatures, but I am mostly focused on the soil moisture signatures in my study. And today I'm going to talk about the dry down patterns of the soil moistures, because it encodes a lot about the processes. So left-hand side, we have the time series of the time series of the soil moisture. X-axis is time, Y-axis is soil moisture, and this is the time series after the rainfall happened. And the X-axis is more in a system space. You have X-axis, soil moisture as X-axis, and its dry down speed in the Y-axis. And we call this one time in the time domain, and this is in the system domain. We call it soil moisture loss function. It characterizes how much loss of the soil moisture happens given the moisture level. And right after the rainfall, the soil moisture drains really quickly. And it represented in here too, when the soil moisture level is high, the speed is high, the dry down speed is high. And a few days after the rainfall, the drainage ceases and evapotranspiration starts to dominate the dry down processes. And it's much slower process as in the time domain, as you can see. And if you plot it in the system domain, we often model it with a linear function like this. And zooming into this part, we often describe the actual evapotranspiration rate that drives the soil moisture dry down as a linear relationship between the soil moisture and evapotranspiration, bounded between the stress point and the wilting point. But it assumes the linear relationship, and it assumes that all plants, regardless of age, function, characteristics, they reduce the evapotranspiration at the same rate. But there are many ecological studies or ecohydrological studies that shows this process is actually nonlinear. So why don't we introduce some nonlinearity in this soil moisture ET relationship? So what we did is to introduce the nonlinearity and allow this Q exponent be not always equal to 1. And this Q is designed to represent different vegetation water saving or consuming behavior. So Q smaller than 1 is designed to represent the aggressive water use behavior of the vegetation, which continues to transpire at the higher rate, even under the low soil moisture conditions. And it's going to cause faster dry downs, as in the yellow line here. On the other hand, Q larger than 1 is designed to represent the reduced transpiration as soon as the plants feel the stress. And the ET rate is reduced under the drier soil moisture conditions, leading to slower dry down behaviors, as in this green line. So this is our hypothesis or the design. So we went to the data, satellite data and the in situ data, and tried to fit the model to get the estimate of the Q from the real data. First, we use the SMAP satellite soil moisture data, which is at 36 kilometer resolution, which is pretty broad, 2 to 3 daily interval, and it measures the surface soil moisture. And we extract the discrete event of the dry down and fit our dry down model to estimate the Q. This is the result of the map of the nonlinearity, and darker blue in this map indicates the dry down was more nonlinear compared to the linear assumption in the previous model. And as you can see, many regions in the all over the world showing a lot of nonlinearity. And our model essentially adding one more parameter to the soil moisture ET relationship. So does it actually help improving characterizing our dry down? And this metric kind of characterizes if adding one parameter worth it or not. And in the blue region, nonlinear model added extra benefit to characterize the dry down. And this is a map of Q the yellow, the more yellow the region is, the loss function is more concave, meaning the ET was higher than estimated by the linear model. And when the region is green, meaning the loss function was more convex, meaning the ET rate was less than predicted by the linear model. And from the satellite soil moisture, most of the regions on average showed convex soil moisture loss function characterized by Q larger than 1, implying that if we use the linear model to estimate the ET from the soil moisture, we're gonna keep overestimating the evapotranspiration rate in general. So this is the big overview of like which region in the world is showing which Q. And now we want to know what kind of climate, soil, vegetation characteristics are controlling this Q. And we looked at the climate and the soil, but they didn't have much strong correlation with this Q. And rather what we saw was a strong connection with its vegetation characteristics. And what this figure shows is the more woody the vegetated area is, the more areas with more woody vegetation towards the right in the figure showed more Q larger than 1 events, a signature of conservative water use. Whereas areas with more herbaceous vegetation cover showed more Q smaller than 1 event, which is a signature of aggressive water use. And this is the bar plot for the dry regions, but the tendency was pretty similar across the different aridity regions. And this is consistent with the known vegetation behavior in ecohydrology, that the woody vegetation being more conservative and herbaceous vegetation being more aggressive. So this is the results from the satellite data, but we also wanted to see the stronger signal from the vegetation. So we were a little bit disappointed by the quality of the southern soil moisture. So we turned into International Soil Moisture Network, which is a global in situ sensor network at daily resolution, and it measures up to 50 centimeter depth. And for this purpose, we just aggregated all the depths of the sensors measurements across different depths. And this analysis is in collaboration with Sabrina Morgan, former PhD students of Kelly Kaler. Okay. And we did the same analysis. We extracted the distinct dry down from the time series and fit the model to extract the Q parameter. And these are the distribution of in-situ soil moisture sensor locations from the International Soil Moisture Network. And these are the loss function that is reconstructed from the estimated Q. And again, we see the pattern we expect. So grasslands being more aggressive and woodlands showing more conservative water use behavior. And because the in-situ soil moisture network has higher resolution, temporal resolution and spatial resolution, we can ask more detailed hypotheses about how this Q varies. So now we framed the variation in Q in the water competition framework. And we hypothesized these two competition factors, the ecological demand for water and hydroclimatic demand for water controls the Q. For the ecological demand side, we expect lower Q, conservative water use when the ecological competition is low. And as the competition gets high, the plants try not to the water be used by neighboring plants, and we expect the more aggressive water use. On the hydroclimatic side, as you move from humid to arid, there is more, the atmospheric demand for the soil water is going to increase. So plants try to compete with the hydroclimatic demand to show the aggressive water use. So this is the hypothesis. And this is a little bit too smoothed out, but these are the patterns of estimated Q that we got from the observed data for grassland, savannas, and woodlands. And now we see the pattern that we expected. So here, the hydroclimatic demand is represented, like ecological demand is represented by the leaf area index, and aridity index as the proxy of hydroclimatic demand. And you see the nice gradation that as the competition increases, the Q signals become showing more aggressive water use. And we see the same tendency, especially in grassland savannas. And for the woodlands, it seems like the woodlands goes back to more conservative water use behavior when the competition is too high, this right top corner in this square. So now we took a saddle point or saddle lines in this space, and we call it the maximum line of aggression, where up to which the plants showing the decrease in Q keep being aggressive, and beyond which the Q goes back to the larger values, meaning the plant goes back to more conservative water use behavior. So we draw this line for 3 different ecosystem types and put them onto the same space. And now we see some patterns that make sense, that the grassland has the most larger boundary. Go ahead, Jonathan.
Is there like a numerical scheme to drawing that line, or is that just what it looked like to you?
There is a numerical scheme, and I think I draw it by hand, and doesn't much actually with the numerical one. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So this is the line drawn by numerical one, not my hand. Yeah. Then we see the maximum line of aggression reaches to the most aggressive, how do I say, conditions for grasslands, whereas the maximum line of aggression is drawn early stage in the competition for the woodlands. So what we think from this 2 study is signature of plant water uptake are encoded in the soil moisture dry downs, especially a few days after the rainfall, especially starting from this few days after the rainfall. And introducing this nonlinearity parameter Q to soil moisture loss function allows us to capture this diverse, nuanced dynamics of vegetation to water stress. And we demonstrated that the Q exhibits some emergent patterns of water use strategies conditioned by ecological and hydroclimatic competitions. And we think there is a lot of application of this study. It's a parsimonious model to capture varying ET and resulting soil moisture loss. on the water limitation at the very broad scale, ecosystem or field scale, we were able to capture that from the satellite. So yeah. And these are some papers that is, yeah, related to this research. And some hopes for dreams for the next step for me is to look at the spatial pattern of Q or spatial patterns of the dry zones to see how if there is emergent patterns, what controls it, and if we can figure out how ET varies in the space from the soil moisture data, that would be really interesting. We can also look at the Q and look in a longer time span to see how the vegetation behavior would change in response to different climate patterns. And this nonlinearity relationship between the soil moisture and ET is something telling us about its relationship. Sometimes, so yeah. So can we like exploit the information to improve the ET predictions? And the last one, what I'm most interested in is there any model that can bridge between the Richards equation and the very simplistic linear model? And by tapping into the nonlinear soil moisture ET relationship, can we find better representation of soil storage to improve the rainfall runoff and eco-hydrological models? And last 2 points touches a little bit about so I talked with the Dapen Fen about this research, and what he found is when he ran the HBV model for different catchments, he originally had a linear bucket for the soil, but he couldn't get the ET and the soil moisture right, and then the Q a little bit wrong. But once he introduced a nonlinearity parameter in the HBV, he was able to get the ET right, and he saw some seasonal switch of seasonal dynamics of the nonlinearity parameter, summer and in the summer and winter. So I hope to find some interesting dynamics between the soil moisture and ET through this research. And that's all from me. And I think I run this through very quickly. So if you have any questions, please let me know.
Nice, nice presentation, Ryoko. Thank you.
Thank you for saying that.
Can you somehow give like an intuition of the scale of difference between, like when you were showing your map that with most of the Q values greater than 1, they go up, from 2 to 3. But like if I was to like actually hold a soil sample in my hand and watch the water evaporate from that soil, like is there like a true like recognizable difference between it, or is it like a very subtle change that could only be really captured with like large samples of data? Like is there a noticeable difference physically, or is it more of a data artifact?
That's a great question. I have to experiment with my plant, probably. But I think I don't have a good physical that's a good question. So this like aggressive and conservative water use behavior has been studied a lot in the plant physiology in a very controlled environment. I have to dig into those papers and how they do it actually, but they So I think by physically they mean let's see. I think they do a controlled experiment in a controlled environment for a plant, and they were able to see this behavior. So that might check the box for the physical phenomena, I would say. But we wanted to see that in this broad scale or in the field or in the wild, and that's what this study is. And according to my experience of growing plants, some plants draws water actually very quickly, and some plants takes a week or 2 weeks to actually drains out drains out all the water. And you can observe that by looking at how dry the soil surface is and see when to water, and you can actually see the differences. So yeah.
Could I ask you to dig into your question a little bit more, Jonathan? From Ryoko's answer, I got the impression that the basic issue is that it affects dynamics, right? Whether the nonlinearity of the curve will be reflected in some kind of dynamic change in the dynamical behavior. Am I reading that correctly? Is that?
I think so.
So it would have something to do with the timing of the evolution of the soil moisture is going to be related to the timing by which the plant wants to extract the water.
So it's not only a soil characteristic, but it's also a vegetation characteristic, which is also one thing that you mentioned, I think, in the next slide, that there's an interaction there.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
It's very cool that, I mean, it sort of makes sense. This is what scientists do. They look at the observed and they try to infer something about the unobserved. But it was cool to see you connect that to this idea of diagnostics and so on. And I like the way that you're trying to project from the data space of joint patterns between variables into some latent space and saying what must be or what is a likely explanation for what's going on underneath, because arguably, getting back to Jonathan's question, that's when you need large samples to be able to verify that what you're seeing is not just a one-off. Yeah.
But now that I did the large sample study, I want to like actually experiment in a very small scale.
Ryoko, this is Hernan Moreno.
Hi, hello.
Hi, I was curious on your next steps when you mentioned that you wanted to connect this with the Richards equation, and was also curious to hear your ideas.
I don't have any idea. It's like my hopes and dreams, actually.
Okay.
Yeah. So right now, as my third chapter, I'm trying to find the spatial variation of this Q. And maybe by aggregating the spatial dry down patterns at the catchment scale and see the average field you can get from the in situ data. Maybe some dynamics emerges, maybe don't. That's my idea right now. But if you have any ideas, suggestions, I'm very open to discuss. And I need more ideas.
No, I was just curious because this is one of the unresolved equations in hydrology. So
Exactly.
So the moment you mentioned it, I thought it's an interesting topic, and probably with the data that you have and all the discovery, you can get a new approximation or
Right.
something similar, especially with the vegetation hydraulics component, which is being unexplored pretty much in the literature. And the books only refer to kind of homogeneous conductivity, hydraulic conductivity, and isotropic flow, and not roots or not secondary hydraulic conductivity present. You know what I mean? So I think you probably have the data to tackle something.
Yeah. I think what I say what allows me to this type of research is a large scale data available, as you mentioned. So there's like international sun motion network data, and there are multiple watershed that has bunch of like 30 or 50 sensors all over the watershed, and these data allows this types of exploration now. So I want to tap into that. I think there are two questions in the chat. The first one is, okay. Do you think the SMUP is the right sensor product to study the interaction between ET and soil moisture? In particular, woody plants don't rely much on the soil moisture at 5 centimeter depth. And since SMUP uses a microwave sensor, its measurement might not be accurate in the dense forest areas. That's what, yeah. That's a very good question. So I removed the data that is in the two dense forests, where SMUP data is supposed to be reliable. But as you said, the SMUP analysis is about the surface soil moisture, and my result is about the surface soil moisture if the woody plants conservatively or aggressively use the surface soil moisture, so they might tap into the deeper layer that we can't really see from the SMUP. So that's in my postdoc proposal to look at the deeper layer using EC2 data.
Okay, I wanted to mention this is a longer conversation we should probably have offline. But are you familiar with Goyu New at Arizona?
No.
He's on the faculty here. He's got a couple of students I'm working with. One of them is Mohammed Farmani, who just spent the summer with Jonathan. And the other is Mohammed Jawad. I think there's some interesting things that could come out of conversation with them. Jawad is also interested in the evapotranspiration representation problem, and in particular extending on Yuan's work with the mass-conserving perceptron sort of thing. And Farmani is interested, in a sense, there's really three things going on. You've got soil and ET, but within the soil, you've got saturated and unsaturated. Right. And so your connection to the Richards equation has a lot to do with this. Your comment about the Richards equation has a lot to do with this saturated, unsaturated
That's right. Yeah.
dynamics. Yeah. So we've been talking quite a bit about that and trying to come up with relatively simple parsimonious ways to incorporate a representation of saturated, unsaturated dynamics for various reasons, including the fact that it would affect how you represent evapotranspiration. Because the plants would interact with the soil through a root zone density profile in the soil, which is going to have a lot to do with how water is distributed in the soil. and so on. Yeah. So I'm just mentioning that to you. If sometime you want to have a longer conversation about that, we could try to set something up.
Yeah, that would be amazing.
But
Yes.
I think you guys are interested in similar sorts of problems with slightly different perspectives. Yeah.
It sounds amazing. I'm very interested.
Okay.
Can you type in the name, like spell out the name in the chat?
Just send me an email and I'll.
Okay, yeah,
yeah,
I will send
yeah.
you an email.
The other comment I wanted to make, if you don't mind, is if you go to your nonlinear relationship,
Or the first, maybe.
yeah, I mean, you're basically taking a difference and raising it to a power, right? Q.
Yeah.
If you go back, just back a few slides, I think right after this, you have, so there's the equation with Q. Oh, no, that one. Go back
Okay.
to this one. And my next comment is sort of stimulated by this picture on the left, which shows this kind of sigmoid shaped
Yeah.
behavior.
Yeah.
And also the fact that you're taking this theta minus baseline over theta star minus over the range and raising it to the power Q.
Yeah.
I recently discovered, so that's a one parameter nonlinearity. I recently discovered a two parameter nonlinearity that you might find interesting. I just wanted to share it with you if that's okay.
Yes, for sure.
All
Do you
right.
want to share the screen?
So I'm going to try to share screen. Apparently you can now see my screen.
Yep.
Okay. So I'm using this program called Desmos, which is a little graphing program. Okay. And so you'll see that I've drawn a straight line from 0 to 1 on the x-axis and 0 to 1 on the y-axis. Okay.
Yep.
And there are a couple of parameters which allow me to change the origin, on the x-axis and the y-axis. But here's what I want you to see is by changing this parameter, okay, I can do something very similar to what you're doing.
Right.
Okay. By changing this parameter, I get a lot more flexibility.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's the shape that we actually want.
So if you like that, I'm happy to share that.
Yes.
Share that with you. It
I would
means
love
you can
to.
fit two parameters to the data,
Yeah.
but it gives you a considerable amount of flexibility
Right.
in terms of monotonic increasing or non-decreasing relationships.
Right.
Just two parameters, and it's closely related to the sigmoid function, but with a slight variation. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I'd be very interested because I think we explored several like sigmoid types of functions by why did we start? There were some shapes that we couldn't like reproduce. We wanted to fit here, but not here. Yeah, so your shape might help, and I wonder how the equifinality would play out when we fit the equation to the data. But that's something, yeah, we should try.
Well, and I'll tell you the same comment I make whenever equifinality comes up, is I don't care about the parameters. I care about the shape of the curve. And if you can give me two different sets of parameters, give me the same shape of the curve, I don't care. It's the shape of the curve that matters. That's what controls dynamics. Yeah. And if two different values give me the same answer, it just means, I got to live with that. Right.
And it's the right Latin space that you've got.
Yeah. That's right. Now you can get a finality by putting in too many parameters, but as you can see from this example, 2 is not too many in this case. Right? In the two-dimensional space, it gives me a degree of control, which is otherwise impossible to get. Yeah. Basically because it allows me to have inflection points, right? With only one parameter, you can't have an inflection point on that curve. You need two parameters to get an inflection point. Yeah. So there may be other ways to parameterize it that are less equifinal. I don't know. I haven't looked into that. Yeah.
Why did you start exploring the sigma function?
Oh, just as extensions of gating functions in
Oh, I see.
mass conserving spectrum. We want flexible gating functions that are parsimonious, but that give us monotonic increasing or monotonic decreasing or monotonic non-decreasing behavior. And it's just an approximation. The true curve might be more complicated, but it's a start, right? You could learn that, and then if you needed to learn a correction from that, you could learn. It's just a more efficient learning strategy to say, in the beginning, I just want to get in the right ballpark. And then once I get in the right ballpark, a straight line is a good first approximation, right? Your power relationship is a good second approximation, but maybe it's not enough yet. Yeah.
And
So where are you in your work now? Which year of you're doing your PhD? I'm sorry, I'm
in my final year of my PhD and trying to graduate in the next summer-ish so that I can start the next year somewhere else, and trying to do the third chapter hasn't started yet because it's been pretty busy with teaching, applying postdoc, applying assistant professor positions and everything. So that's
So you don't know yet where you're going to be?
No.
Okay. And you're primarily looking in the Americas, or are you also looking at Europe? Yeah.
I'm primarily looking into the US because some of my visa situation allow me to at least stay in the US next 4 years. So I'm trying to take
Where are you from?
I'm from Japan. Yeah.
Okay, I thought from your name, but
yeah. And like female scientists in Japan it's not really a fun position to be. So yeah.
Are you looking at Canada also?
I haven't, but there are less jobs in Canada, I suppose.
Really? I got the impression that funding was good in Canada right now, but
right, that's a good point. Yeah, I'm right. I should look into it. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming and asking good questions and listening to my talk.